I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Liam, 30M, in a few months. His mother, Eleanor, has always been a challenge. She is polite on the surface, but underneath there is always a current of disapproval. She makes little comments about my job, my family, and my choices. Liam always says that is just how she is. He asks me to be patient with her. For the sake of peace, I have tried my best. I have smiled through her backhanded compliments. I have ignored the way she compares me to Liam's ex-girlfriends. I have pretended not to notice when she rearrates my things when she visits our apartment. I told myself it was just her way of feeling involved. Our engagement party was last weekend. It was a small affair at her house. She had invited all of Liam's family and a few of her own close friends. My family was there too. But they felt a little out of place. Eleanor has a way of making people feel like they do not quite belong. She holds her home like a queen holds her court. Everyone is a subject, and she is the one who sets the rules. I watched my own mother try to make conversation with her, only to be met with short, dismissive answers. It hurt to see, but I kept my smile in place. I was marrying Liam, not his mother. I just had to endure these moments for a lifetime. The thought was heavy, but I pushed it away. Toward the end of the evening, Eleanor gathered everyone in the living room. She said she had a special presentation to make. I felt a knot form in my stomach. With Eleanor, a special presentation was never just a kind gesture. It was always a performance, with her at the center. She stood by the fireplace, a small velvet box in her hands. She looked at me, her smile tight and practiced. It did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were cold, calculating. They always were when she looked at me. It was a look that said she was weighing my worth and finding it lacking. As you all know, she began, her voice carrying through the quiet room. The union of two families is a momentous occasion. It is a time for traditions to be honored. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Liam squeezed my hand. He thought this was a genuine moment of acceptance. I knew better. I could feel the hidden meaning in every syllable she spoke. This was not about acceptance. This was about power. This was about her reminding everyone, especially me, who was in charge of this family. She opened the velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of white silk, was a silver locket. It was old and tarnished in places, but it was beautiful. It was an oval shape with intricate floral engravings on the front. It looked delicate, like something from another time. A murmur of appreciation went through the room. Liam's aunts and cousins looked at it with reverence. I could tell this was an object they all recognized. It held history. It held meaning for them. For me, it only held a sense of dread. Eleanor lifted the locket from the box. She held it up for everyone to see. The silver caught the light from the chandelier above. This locket has been in our family for 5 generations, she announced. It was given to my great-grandmother by her husband on their wedding day. It has been passed down to the woman marrying the eldest son ever since. She looked directly at me. Her gaze was intense. I felt like a bug under a microscope. I felt like she was dissecting me in front of everyone I knew. She walked over to me. Liam stood up, a proud smile on his face. He thought his mother was finally welcoming me into the family. I knew this was a test. Everything with her was a test. She held the locket out, but she did not hand it to me. She kept her fingers wrapped around it. "Clara," she said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "I am entrusting you with this piece of our family's history." The word entrusting hung in the air. It was a word that implied temporary ownership. It was a word that meant this was not truly mine. Then she delivered the line that made my blood run cold. She leaned in, close enough for me to smell her expensive perfume, but she spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is a family heirloom," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "It is not a wedding gift. It is a symbol of your connection to our lineage. You are to care for it, to respect it, and to keep it safe until it is time for it to be passed on again." My smile faltered. My face felt stiff. She was making it clear in front of our families that I was just a temporary keeper. I was not being given a gift. I was being given a responsibility, a burden. She finally placed the locket in my hand. It was cool to the touch. It felt heavier than it looked. The room erupted in polite applause. Liam hugged me, whispering in my ear how much this meant. He did not see the humiliation. He only saw the gesture. My mother caught my eye from across the room. She gave me a small, worried smile. She understood. She knew what Eleanor was doing. She was marking her territory. She was telling me that I might be marrying her son, but I would never truly be one of them. I would always be an outsider, holding their history on loan. I held the locket tightly in my hand. I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to throw it back at her. I wanted to tell her that I did not want her conditional acceptance. But I could not. That would cause a scene. It would ruin the evening. It would make me look ungrateful. It would prove her right. She believed I was not good enough, and if I reacted with anger, I would be confirming her unspoken accusations. So I did what I always did. I smiled. I thanked her. I let her win. For now. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People came up to me to admire the locket. They told me stories about Liam's grandmother and great-grandmother wearing it. Each story made me feel more like a fraud. I was holding something precious that did not belong to me. It was a constant physical reminder of my status as an outsider. When we finally got home that night, Liam was ecstatic. He saw his mother's gesture as a huge step forward in our relationship. "I can't believe she gave it to you," he said, taking the locket from me and examining it. "She never even let my last girlfriend touch it." The comment was meant to make me feel special. It only made me feel worse. It confirmed that the locket was a tool she used to measure the women in her son's life. A way to approve or disapprove. A way to maintain control. I was just the latest one to be put to the test. She made it clear it's not a gift. "Liam," I said quietly. I did not want to fight. I was too tired, too emotionally drained from the performance of the evening. I just wanted him to understand, even a little bit. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his brow furrowing. Of course it's a gift. It's the most important gift she could give. He was not listening. He was hearing what he wanted to hear. He saw his mother as a difficult but ultimately loving person. I saw her as a master manipulator. We were living in two different realities. "She said it's an heirloom I have to care for until it's passed on," I repeated. "That doesn't sound like a gift. It sounds like a job." "You're reading too much into it, Clara," he said with a sigh. It was his standard response whenever I tried to talk about his mother. He placed the locket on the dresser. "Just be happy. She's finally accepting you." I knew I would get nowhere. I dropped the subject. But as I got ready for bed, the weight of the locket seemed to fill the room. It was a silent testament to the battle that lay ahead. A battle I was not sure I had the strength to fight. For the next few days, the locket sat on my dresser. I did not touch it. I did not want to look at it. It was a symbol of my future. A future where I would always be under Eleanor's thumb. A future where my husband would not, or could not, stand up for me. I felt a deep sense of unease. Was this the life I wanted? Was my love for Liam strong enough to overcome the constant presence of his mother's disapproval? I was not so sure anymore. One afternoon, I decided I could not let the locket just sit there. It felt like letting Eleanor's influence fester in my own bedroom. I decided to clean it. Maybe if I made it shine, it would feel less like a relic from her family and more like something that belonged in my home. I took it to the kitchen and got a soft cloth and some silver polish. It was a way of taking control, even in a small way. I was not just its keeper. I was its caretaker. I would make my own mark on it. I sat at the kitchen table and began to gently rub the polish into the silver. The tarnish started to lift, revealing the intricate details of the engravings. There were tiny leaves and vines swirling around a single rose in the center. It was even more beautiful than I had first realized. As I worked on it, I felt some of my anger begin to fade. It was not the locket's fault that it was being used as a weapon. It was just an object, a piece of history. I was cleaning the clasp when my thumbnail accidentally pressed a small, almost invisible seam on the side. I had not noticed it before. It was not the main opening. It was something else. With a soft click, a tiny hidden compartment on the back of the locket popped open. I gasped. I had no idea it was there. The main part of the locket, where a picture would go, was still firmly shut. This was something different. Something secret. My heart started to beat faster. I carefully put the locket down on the table. Inside the tiny compartment was a minuscule piece of paper, folded into a tight, small square. It was yellowed with age. The writing on it would be tiny. My hands were trembling as I used a pair of tweezers from my first aid kit to carefully lift it out. It was so fragile, I was afraid it would crumble to dust. I felt like an archaeologist discovering an ancient artifact. I unfolded the paper with painstaking slowness. The paper was thin, almost like onion skin. There were a few lines of faded blue ink written in a delicate, looping script. It was a woman's handwriting. It was elegant and old-fashioned. I had to squint to read the words. What I saw made the air leave my lungs. It was a short note, but its message was a bombshell. The note read, "To the woman who receives this locket is not a leash. It is a key. My daughter Eleanor does not understand its purpose. She sees it as a symbol of control. I see it as a promise of freedom. Do not let her bully you. The proof you need is with my sister Agnes. She will know what this means." The note was not signed with a name, but I knew who it had to be from. It was from Liam's grandmother. Eleanor's mother, the woman who had owned this locket before her. I read the note again, and then a third time. A key? A promise of freedom? Proof? What did it all mean? And who was Agnes? I had never heard Liam or Eleanor mention a great aunt named Agnes. The note was a direct contradiction to everything Eleanor had said. The locket was not a symbol of my connection to her lineage. It was a weapon against her. A secret message passed from one generation of her family's women to the next. A warning and a call to action. A wave of emotions washed over me. I felt a sense of vindication. I was not crazy. I was not overthinking things. Eleanor's own mother knew what she was like. She had known her daughter would use this beautiful heirloom as a tool of manipulation, and she had planted a seed of rebellion right inside it. I felt a connection to this woman I had never met. She had seen me, or someone like me, coming. She had left a lifeline. But I also felt a surge of fear. What was this proof? And what would happen if I tried to find it? This was a direct challenge to Eleanor. It was a declaration of war. If I pursued this, I would be crossing a line. There would be no going back to polite smiles and silent endurance. I would be actively fighting back. And I had no idea what the consequences would be. Liam would be caught in the middle. His loyalty would be tested. Our relationship might not survive it. I folded the note back up and carefully placed it back inside the hidden compartment. I clicked it shut. The locket no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a secret. A powerful secret that now belonged to me. I looked at the locket, gleaming on my kitchen table. It was no longer just a piece of silver. It was a choice. I could ignore the note, pretend I never found it, and continue to live under Eleanor's shadow. Or I could follow the path Liam's grandmother had laid out for me. I could find Agnes. I could find the proof. I could fight for my freedom. I took a deep breath. I knew what I had to do. I was done being the quiet, polite girl who just wanted to keep the peace. Peace was no longer an option. That evening, when Liam came home, I tried to approach the subject casually. I did not want to show him the note. Not yet. I did not know how he would react. I needed to know more about this mysterious great Aunt Agnes first. I needed to see if he would help me or if he would shut me down. His reaction would tell me everything I needed to know about whose side he was really on. We were eating dinner when I brought it up. I was looking at some of your old family photos today, I began, trying to keep my voice light. I saw a picture of your grandmother with her sister. I think her name was Agnes. I was guessing. I had no idea if there were any photos. It was a shot in the dark. Liam looked up from his plate, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Agnes, where did you hear that name? He asked. His tone was not curious. It was guarded. That was my first clue. He knew exactly who she was. I think your mom mentioned her once a long time ago. I lied. I was just curious. I've never met her. Liam pushed his food around his plate. He seemed uncomfortable. We don't really see her, he said curtly. She and my mom don't get along. Oh, I said, feigning innocence. That's a shame. Why not? It's old family stuff, he said, his voice dismissive. Agnes is difficult. She's kind of the black sheep of the family. It's better to just stay out of it. His answer confirmed what the note had implied. Agnes was an outsider. She was estranged from Eleanor, which meant she was exactly the person I needed to talk to. But Liam's reaction was disheartening. He was already closing ranks, protecting his mother, shutting down the conversation. He did not want to talk about it. He wanted the problem to go away. I was just thinking it would be nice to invite all of your family to the wedding, I said, pressing a little further. Even the difficult ones. It's supposed to be a day about bringing family together, right? Clara, just drop it, he said, his voice firm. Trust me, inviting Agnes would be a disaster. My mom would lose her mind. It's not worth the drama. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Please, for me, don't stir things up. And there it was, the same old pattern. Keep the peace. Don't upset Eleanor. My feelings, my curiosity, my desire to connect with his family, none of it mattered as much as his mother's comfort. In that moment, I realized I was completely on my own in this. Liam would not be my partner in this fight. He would be an obstacle. His loyalty was to the status quo, to the path of least resistance. And that path always led straight back to his mother. I felt a cold knot of disappointment in my chest. I had hoped, foolishly, that he would be on my side. But his first instinct was to protect his mother from a problem she had created. He did not even ask why I was suddenly so interested in Agnes. He just saw it as a threat to his carefully managed peace, a peace that came at my expense. Okay, I said, my voice flat. I'll drop it. I had to pretend to agree. If he knew I was still looking for Agnes, he would try to stop me. He might even tell his mother. I had to be careful. I had to do this on my own. After he went to bed that night, I stayed up late. I sat at my computer and started my search. I typed Agnes and Liam's family surname into the search bar. At first, I found nothing. There were no social media profiles, no public records that were easy to find. It was as if she did not exist in the digital world. This made me even more determined. Someone who was that private had to have a reason. I tried a different approach. I searched for Liam's grandmother's obituary. I finally found it from about 10 years ago. It was a short notice in a local paper. It listed her surviving family members. It mentioned her daughter, Eleanor, and her grandson, Liam. And there, at the end of the list, was her sister, Agnes. It listed her married name. It was a different last name than I had been searching for. It was a new lead, a crucial one. With her full name, I was able to find more. I found a public record of a property deed in a small town about 2 hours away. The address was in a quiet, rural area. It seemed plausible. A woman who was the black sheep of the family might choose to live away from the city, away from the drama, away from Eleanor. I wrote down the address. I looked at the town on a map. It was a long drive, but it was doable. I could go on a weekday, when I took a day off from work. I would tell Liam I was visiting an old friend. It felt deceptive, but I had no choice. He had made it clear he would not support me. This was my journey to take alone. The next few days were tense. I felt like I was living a double life. I was going through the motions of wedding planning with Liam, discussing flower arrangements and cake flavors, all while secretly planning my trip to find Agnes. I felt a growing distance between us. He was happy and oblivious, thinking I had dropped the subject of his aunt. I was quiet and watchful, feeling more and more like I was engaged to a stranger, a man who would always prioritize his mother's feelings over mine. The locket sat on my nightstand. I looked at it every morning and every night. It was my secret motivation. It was a reminder of what was at stake: my freedom, my self-respect. The note inside was a promise from a woman I'd never met, a promise that I did not have to accept this life of quiet submission. She had given me a key. Now I just had to find the lock. The day of my trip, I woke up early. I told Liam I was driving to see my college roommate, Sarah, who lived in the opposite direction. He did not question it. He was used to me having a life outside of him, and for that, I was grateful. It made the lie easier to swallow. I packed a small bag with water and snacks and the address I had found. I put the locket on. I wore it under my shirt, resting against my skin. It felt like a shield, a piece of armor for the battle I was about to walk into. The drive was long. The city slowly gave way to suburbs and then to rolling hills and farmland. It was peaceful. It gave me time to think. I rehearsed what I would say to Agnes. How do you introduce yourself to a stranger and tell her you found a secret message from her dead sister in a locket? It sounded like something out of a movie. I was nervous she would think I was crazy. Or worse, that she would be loyal to Eleanor and turn me away. It was a huge risk. But it was a risk I had to take. I finally found the address. It was a small, charming cottage set back from the road, surrounded by a beautiful garden. There were flowers everywhere, blooming in a riot of color. It looked like a place of peace. It did not look like the home of a difficult woman. I parked my car on the gravel driveway and took a deep breath. This was it. There was no turning back now. I walked up the stone path to the front door. I could hear the sound of wind chimes tinkling somewhere nearby. I raised my hand and knocked. I waited. My heart was pounding in my chest. For a moment, I thought no one was home. I was about to turn and leave when I heard the sound of a lock turning. The door opened a crack. An eye peered out at me. It was a sharp, intelligent eye, the color of a stormy sky. "Can I help you?" a voice asked. It was a woman's voice, raspy and strong. It was not unkind, but it was not welcoming either. It was a voice that was used to being left alone. "I'm looking for Agnes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "My name is Clara. I'm engaged to Liam, Eleanor's son." The eye blinked. The door opened a little wider. I could see her face now. She was an older woman, probably in her late 70s. Her hair was a wild mane of silver, pulled back in a loose bun. She had high cheekbones and a firm jaw. She looked nothing like Eleanor. There was a strength in her face that Eleanor lacked. Eleanor's face was all soft lines and polite masks. This woman's face was a map of a life lived without apology. She looked at me, her gaze piercing, as if she was trying to read my soul. "Eleanor's son," she repeated slowly. Her voice was flat. "What do you want?" I knew this was my only chance. I had to be direct. I reached under my shirt and pulled out the locket. I held it out in the palm of my hand. "I came because of this," I said. "I found the note from your sister." Agnes's eyes widened. Her expression changed from suspicion to shock. She looked from the locket to my face and then back to the locket. She was silent for a long moment. I held my breath. I had no idea what she would do. Finally, she unlatched the chain on the door. She opened it all the way. "You'd better come inside," she said, her voice softer now. "It seems we have a lot to talk about." I stepped inside her house. It was cozy and filled with books. There were stacks of them on every surface. The air smelled of old paper and brewing tea. It was a house that felt lived in, a house full of stories. Agnes led me to the kitchen. She put a kettle on the stove and got out 2 mugs. She did not say anything. She just moved with a quiet, deliberate purpose. I sat at her small wooden table and waited. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. I had found her. I had found the next piece of the puzzle. Finally, she sat down across from me with 2 steaming mugs of tea. She looked at me, her eyes full of a sadness I could not quite understand. "I wondered if anyone would ever find it," she said quietly. My sister was a clever woman. She knew how to hide things in plain sight. "What did she mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What is the proof?" Agnes took a long sip of her tea. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts. "The proof," she said, "is proof of who Eleanor really is. It's proof of a lifetime of selfishness and greed. My sister, she saw it all. She tried to protect her family from it. But Eleanor was always one step ahead. She told me stories about their childhood. Eleanor was always the favored one, the beautiful one. But she was also cruel. She would take Agnes's toys and break them. She would tell lies to get Agnes in trouble. Their mother, Liam's grandmother, saw the darkness in Eleanor even then. She tried to teach her kindness and empathy, but it never took. Eleanor was only ever concerned with herself. When my sister got sick, Agnes continued, her voice thick with emotion. She knew she had to do something to protect the family's assets. Eleanor had a gambling problem back then. She was reckless with money. My sister was terrified she would squander everything their parents had worked so hard for. This was a side of Eleanor I had never known. The perfect, composed matriarch had a secret history of recklessness. It was hard to imagine. But it also made a certain kind of sense. Her obsession with control, with appearances, it was all a way to cover up her own past failings. So my sister did something drastic, Agnes said. She changed her will. She put the majority of her assets, including the family home that Eleanor lives in, into a trust. My eyes widened. A trust? For who? For Liam, Agnes said, but with a very specific condition. Liam would be the beneficiary, but he would not get control of the trust until he was married. And even then, the control would not go to him. It would go to his wife. I stared at her, stunned. To me? Agnes nodded. To you, or to whoever married him. My sister knew Liam was a good boy, but he was weak when it came to his mother. He would never stand up to her. She knew that the only way to protect the family's legacy was to put it in the hands of someone Eleanor could not control, someone with a backbone. She wrote it all down in a letter explaining her reasons. She put the letter and the true will in a safe deposit box. And she gave me the key. It all clicked into place. The locket was not just a message. It was a test. Liam's grandmother had set up a test for the woman who would marry her grandson. She needed someone smart enough to find the note, brave enough to seek out Agnes, and strong enough to use the information. She was looking for a fighter. She was looking for someone who could finally stand up to her daughter. Eleanor doesn't know about the trust? I asked. She knows about a will, Agnes said. A fake one. My sister had her lawyer draft a second will that left everything to Eleanor. That's the one she presented after my sister passed. She thinks the house is hers. She thinks all the money is hers. She has no idea that she is living on borrowed time. And on borrowed money. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Eleanor had been living a lie for years, a lie that her own mother had constructed to contain her. And now I held the key to unraveling it all. Where is the key? I asked. The key to the safe deposit box? Agnes smiled, a true, genuine smile that lit up her whole face. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small, old-fashioned brass key. It was attached to a simple metal ring. It's been waiting for you, she said. She placed it on the table between us. It looked so small, so insignificant, but it held the power to change everything. "There's something else you should know," Agnes said, her expression turning serious again. "The lawyer who holds the documents for the trust, his name is Mr. Harrison. He's an old friend of the family. He knows all about the situation. He was my sister's most trusted advisor. He's been waiting for someone to show up with this key." She wrote down his name and number on a piece of paper. "You need to call him. You need to go to the bank. You need to see the documents for yourself. But you have to be careful, Clara. When Eleanor finds out, she will not be gracious. She will be vicious. You need to be prepared for a war." I looked at the key. I looked at the lawyer's name. This was real. This was happening. I was no longer just fighting for my own self-respect. I was fighting to fulfill the last wish of a woman who had put her faith in a stranger. A woman who believed I was strong enough to protect her family. "Why didn't you do something sooner?" I asked Agnes. "Why did you wait for me?" She sighed, a heavy, weary sound. "It wasn't my place," she said. "My sister's instructions were clear. The power was to go to Liam's wife. It was her battle to fight, not mine. I am the keeper of the key, not the wielder of the sword. I tried to warn people about Eleanor for years. No one listened. They all saw me as the bitter, jealous sister. So I retreated. I built my life here. And I waited. I hoped that one day Liam would bring home a woman who was worthy of my sister's trust." She looked at me, her eyes searching my face. "I think he finally has." Her words filled me with a sense of purpose I had never felt before. I was not just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Agnes, for her sister, for the truth. I left Agnes's house that afternoon with the key in my pocket and the lawyer's number in my phone. The world looked different. The colors seemed brighter. The air felt cleaner. I had a mission. I had a purpose. And for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid of Eleanor. I was ready for her. The drive home was a blur of planning. I knew I had to be strategic. I could not just confront Eleanor with this information. I needed to have all my ducks in a row. I needed to see the documents for myself. I needed to understand the full extent of the power I now held, and I needed to decide how and when to use it. A public confrontation seemed too messy. A private one seemed too easy for her to deny. I needed the perfect moment. A moment where she would have no choice but to face the truth. A moment where her power would crumble in front of everyone who had enabled her for so long. When I got home, Liam was already there. He asked me how my day with Sarah was. I told him it was great. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it away. This was bigger than my feelings of discomfort. This was about justice. It was about breaking a cycle of manipulation that had been poisoning his family for decades. He was a victim in this too, even if he did not know it. He had been raised by a woman who had taught him that love was conditional and that peace was worth any price, even his own integrity. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison. His voice was old and kind. When I told him who I was and that Agnes had sent me, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I see," he said finally. "We have been expecting this call for a very long time." He asked me to come to his office the next day. He said he would arrange for us to visit the bank together. It was happening. It was all moving so fast. I told Liam I had a last-minute work meeting that I could not get out of. He was annoyed that it was cutting into our wedding planning time, but he accepted it. The distance between us was growing wider with every secret I kept. I knew a confrontation with him was inevitable, but I had to deal with his mother first. He was a battle for another day. Right now, I had to focus on the war. Mr. Harrison's office was in an old, stately building downtown. It was the kind of place with wood paneling and leather chairs that smelled of history and money. He was a kind-faced man with white hair and gentle eyes. He greeted me warmly. He told me he had known Liam's grandmother since they were children. He spoke of her with great affection and respect. "She was a remarkable woman," he said as we sat in his office. fiercely intelligent, and she loved her family more than anything. But she was not blind to their faults. She saw the danger Eleanor posed. This trust was her way of building a firewall, a way to protect the family from its own weakest link. He explained the legalities of the trust to me. It was ironclad. Upon my marriage to Liam, I would become the sole trustee of the estate. That meant I would have complete control over the family home, a significant investment portfolio, and several other assets. Eleanor was, in legal terms, a tenant in her own home, a tenant who could be evicted. The power was absolute. It was more than I could have ever imagined. Your grandmother-in-law-to-be was very specific in her instructions, Mr. Harrison explained. She did not want this to be used as a weapon of cruelty. She wanted it to be used as a tool for balance, a way to force Eleanor to behave with decency and respect. She hoped that the woman who discovered this would be wise enough to use that power justly. He looked at me, his gaze steady. She placed a great deal of faith in you, my dear. A woman she had never even met. The weight of that faith settled on my shoulders. It was a heavy burden, but it was also a profound honor. This was not just about getting back at Eleanor for her petty insults. This was about upholding a legacy. It was about being the kind of woman Liam's grandmother had hoped for. We went to the bank. The safe deposit box was in a large, cold vault. The bank manager used his key, and I used the brass key Agnes had given me. The box slid out. It was heavy. Mr. Harrison lifted it and carried it to a private viewing room. My hands were shaking as he opened the lid. Inside, there were 2 large manila envelopes. One was labeled, Last Will and Testament. The other was labeled, For my granddaughter-in-law. I opened the will first. It was exactly as Agnes and Mr. Harrison had described. A formal, legal document, signed and witnessed, outlining the creation of the trust and the transfer of all major assets into it. It named me, upon my marriage to Liam, as the trustee. Then I opened the other envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten on the same delicate paper as the note in the locket. It was several pages long. It was from Liam's grandmother. Her name was Margaret. The letter was addressed to me. My dearest girl, it began. If you are reading this, it means you are clever and you are brave. It means you have not let my daughter intimidate you. For that, you have my eternal gratitude. I am writing this because I want you to understand why I have placed this heavy burden upon you. I love my daughter, Eleanor, but I do not trust her. She is a woman consumed by her own insecurities. She sees the world as a competition, and she will do anything to win. She will use kindness as a weapon and love as a cage. She has done it her whole life. Margaret went on to describe in heartbreaking detail Eleanor's patterns of manipulation. She wrote about the gambling, the lies, the way she had driven a wedge between Margaret and her own son, Liam's father. She described how Eleanor had controlled every aspect of Liam's life, making him dependent on her approval, teaching him to avoid conflict at all costs. I have watched her son, my sweet grandson Liam, grow up in her shadow. The letter continued. He is a good man, with a good heart, but he is not strong enough to stand up to her. He has been conditioned to please her, to appease her. It is not his fault. It is mine. I should have done more to stop her when he was young. But now it is too late for me. But it is not too late for him. And it is not too late for you. Tears welled in my eyes as I read her words. She understood everything. She understood the dynamic between Liam and his mother perfectly. She understood the silent struggle I had been facing. I am giving you this power not so you can punish her, she wrote, but so you can free him and free yourself. You will have control of this family's future. You can set the terms. You can demand respect. You can teach Eleanor that there are consequences for her actions. You can show Liam what a true partnership looks like, one based on mutual respect, not on fear and obligation. Be fair, be firm, be the woman I know you are, the woman this family has been waiting for. The letter ended with a simple sign-off. With all my hope, Margaret. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I felt a profound connection to this woman. She was not just Liam's grandmother. She was my ally, my benefactor, my secret champion. She had armed me for the battle she knew I would have to fight. I made copies of everything: the will, the trust documents, the letter. Mr. Harrison helped me. He was my witness. I put the originals back in the safe deposit box. I left the bank that day with a folder full of ammunition. I had the truth on my side. And the law. Now, I just needed to choose my moment. The opportunity presented itself a week later. Eleanor had insisted on hosting a formal dinner party to finalize the wedding plans. It was a ridiculous excuse. All the major plans were already set. This was just another opportunity for her to be in control, to preside over the family. She invited my parents, Liam's father, and a few of Liam's aunts and uncles. It was the perfect stage. A room full of the very people who had enabled her behavior for years. A room full of witnesses. I spent the days leading up to the dinner in a state of calm resolve. The fear was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was a steely determination. I knew what I had to do. I spoke to Agnes on the phone. I told her about the letter, about the documents. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "My sister would be so proud of you." Her words were all the encouragement I needed. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. I chose a simple, elegant dress. I did my hair and makeup. I wanted to look composed, unflappable. And I wore the locket. This time, I wore it on the outside of my dress. I wanted her to see it. I wanted it to be a silent declaration of what was to come. When Liam and I arrived at his parents' house, Eleanor greeted us at the door. Her eyes immediately went to the locket. A flicker of something, maybe satisfaction, crossed her face. She thought it was a symbol of my submission. She had no idea it was a symbol of her downfall. The dinner was as tense as I expected. Eleanor held court at the head of the table, making passive-aggressive comments about everything from the catering choices to my parents' vacation plans. Liam's father, a quiet, gentle man named David, just sat there, smiling weakly. He had long ago given up on trying to manage his wife. The rest of the family followed his lead, letting Eleanor's comments slide, pretending not to notice her subtle digs. They were all complicit in her reign of quiet terror. I remained silent through most of it. I ate my food. I smiled politely. I let her think she was in complete control. I was waiting for the right moment. The moment she would inevitably overplay her hand. It came during dessert. The conversation had turned to where Liam and I would live after the wedding. We had been planning to stay in our apartment for a few years and save up for a down payment on a house. "It's a shame you'll be in that tiny apartment," Eleanor said with a sigh, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "This house is so big, far too big for just David and me. If only we had a responsible young couple to help us take care of it." She looked at me, a smug little smile on her face. It was a power play. She was dangling the house in front of me, the ultimate prize, the symbol of her domain. She was reminding me that she held all the cards. That was my opening. I took a sip of water. I set my glass down gently. I looked directly at her. "That's very generous of you to offer, Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and even. "But I think we'll be fine. After all, managing a property of this size is a big responsibility. I'm not sure you'd want to give up that kind of control." A hush fell over the table. My tone was polite. But the challenge was unmistakable. Eleanor's smile tightened. "I'm not sure what you mean, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "This is my house. I'm simply offering to share it." "Is it your house?" I asked, my voice still quiet. I was under the impression that Margaret had other plans for it. The mention of her mother's name was like a physical blow. Eleanor flinched. The color drained from her face. "My mother left this house to me," she said, her voice sharp. "It's all in her will." "Are you sure about that?" I pressed gently. Are you sure you saw the final will? The whole table was silent now. Everyone was staring at us. Liam looked at me, his eyes wide with confusion and panic. He opened his mouth to say something, to tell me to stop, but I gave him a look that told him to stay out of it. For once he did. What are you implying? Eleanor hissed, her mask of politeness finally cracking. I'm not implying anything, I said. I reached up and touched the locket. I'm just saying that Margaret was a very clever woman. She knew how to hide things in plain sight. I looked around the table at the faces of Liam's family. She left a message, for me, inside this locket. A collective gasp went through the room. Eleanor looked like she had seen a ghost. You're lying, she whispered. There was no note. Oh, but there was, I said, and it led me to Agnes. The name Agnes hung in the air like a death sentence. Eleanor's composure completely shattered. That woman, she spat. She has hated me her whole life. She would say anything to hurt me. She didn't have to say anything, I replied. She just had to give me the key. I let that sink in. I watched the dawning horror on Eleanor's face as she started to put the pieces together. The locket, Agnes, a key. She knew. In that moment, she knew she was caught. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, trying to bluff, but her voice was weak. Her hands were shaking. I think you do, I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope, the one with the copies. I placed it on the table. This is a copy of your mother's real will, Eleanor, the one she signed just before she passed, the one that puts this house and most of her other assets into a trust. I paused, letting the words land. A trust for Liam, a trust that I will be in control of, as of our wedding day. The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the mantelpiece. Eleanor stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. David, Liam's father, looked from the envelope to his wife, his face a mask of confusion. That's impossible, Eleanor whispered. Is it? I said. I also have a copy of a letter from your mother, to me, explaining why she did it. She wrote about your gambling, your recklessness, your need for control. She wrote about how you've manipulated her grandson his entire life. Would you like me to read it out loud? I have it right here. I made a move to open the envelope. No. Eleanor cried out, her voice cracking. It was a sound of pure desperation. The game was over. She had lost. And she had lost in front of everyone. Her power, her image, her carefully constructed world. It all came crashing down in that one shattering moment. Liam's Uncle Robert was the first to speak. Eleanor, is this true? He asked, his voice grave. Eleanor just stared at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and defeat. She did not answer. She could not. There was nothing left to say. I looked at Liam. His face was pale. He looked like he was going to be sick. He was staring at his mother, but it was like he was seeing her for the first time. He was seeing the manipulator his grandmother had described. He was seeing the woman I had been trying to tell him about for years. The truth was, finally, brutally, clear. My parents were looking at me with a mixture of shock and pride. My mother gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. She understood. I stood up. I think this dinner is over, I said, my voice steady. Liam and I will be leaving. We have a lot to talk about. I looked at Eleanor one last time. She looked small, defeated. We will be in touch about the terms of your living arrangement here, I said, my voice cold. From now on, things are going to be different. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I did not look back. I heard Liam get up and follow me. We walked out of the house and into the cool night air. We did not speak. We got in the car. The silence was heavy. I drove. I had no idea where we were going. I just needed to get away from that house, away from her. We drove for what felt like hours. Finally, I pulled over at a scenic overlook. The city lights twinkled below us. The silence in the car was deafening. I waited for him to speak. I knew these next few moments would define the rest of our lives. "Is it true?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. "All of it?" "Yes," I said quietly. "It's all true." He was silent for another long moment. He was processing it. The lies, the manipulation, the fact that his entire life had been shaped by his mother's secrets, the fact that I had known and I hadn't told him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. His voice was not angry. It was hurt. It was the voice of a man whose world had just been turned upside down. "Because I knew you wouldn't believe me," I said honestly. "You never have before when I've tried to talk to you about her. You would have tried to stop me. You would have told me to keep the peace. You would have chosen her, Liam, just like you always do." The truth of my words hung between us. He could not deny it. He knew it was true. "I needed to do this on my own," I continued. "I needed to know that I could stand up to her, and I needed you to see who she really is, without your filters, without your excuses. I needed you to see the truth for yourself." He leaned his head against the window. "My grandmother knew," he said, his voice full of wonder. "She knew all along." "Yes," I said. "She did. And she left us a way out. She left us a chance to have a real life, a real partnership, one that isn't controlled by your mother." I looked at him. His eyes were filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Clara," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I never listened. I'm so sorry I let you face her alone." It was the first time he had ever truly apologized, the first time he had ever acknowledged my struggle. It was the first time he had ever chosen me. "I know," I said, my own voice thick with emotion. "But the question is, what happens now? Where do we go from here?" He turned to me, his expression full of a new resolve I had never seen in him before. "We go forward," he said. "Together. You and me. But things have to change. I have to change. We need to set boundaries with my mother, real ones, and I need to be the one to enforce them." He reached out and took my hand. "I love you, Clara, and I'm so proud of you. You are the strongest person I know. My grandmother was right about you." In that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be fallout. There would be anger and resentment from his family, but we would face it together, as a team. For the first time, I felt like we were truly a team. The aftermath was exactly as messy as I had anticipated. The family was in an uproar. Some of them, like Uncle Robert, were appalled by Eleanor's deception. They called to offer their support. Others, the ones who had benefited from Eleanor's favor, were angry. They accused me of being a gold digger, of tearing the family apart. I ignored them. Their opinions no longer mattered. Eleanor refused to speak to us for 2 weeks. She sent a barrage of hateful text messages to Liam, calling me a monster, a snake, a homewrecker. For the first time in his life, Liam did not respond. He blocked her number. He told his father that they would only communicate through lawyers until Eleanor was willing to have a civilized conversation. David, his father, was caught in the middle. He was a broken man. He called Liam crying, saying he didn't know what to do. He had enabled Eleanor's behavior for so long that he didn't know how to function without her in control. Liam was firm but kind with him. He told his father that he loved him, but he would not allow his mother's toxicity to ruin his life anymore. He suggested his parents go to counseling. We hired a lawyer to draw up a formal agreement. Eleanor and David could continue to live in the house, but it was no longer theirs. It was an asset of the trust, which I controlled. They would have to pay rent, a nominal fee, but a fee nonetheless. It was a symbolic gesture, a reminder of the new power dynamic. There were other conditions. Eleanor was no longer allowed to be involved in our finances. She was not allowed to come to our home unannounced. All communication had to be respectful. If she violated any of the terms, they would have to move out. Eleanor fought it, of course. She threatened to sue. But her lawyer told her she had no case. The will was ironclad. She had been caught committing fraud by presenting a false will. If she took us to court, she would not only lose, but she could face legal charges. She was trapped. She had no choice but to sign the agreement. The wedding was a much smaller affair than we had originally planned. We disinvited the family members who had sided with Eleanor. It was a difficult decision, but a necessary one. We wanted to be surrounded by people who truly supported us. Agnes was there. She sat in the front row right next to my mother. She was beaming. She held my hand before the ceremony and told me that Margaret would have been overjoyed. Eleanor and David came. They sat in the back. Eleanor wore black. She looked like she was at a funeral. She did not speak to me. She did not even look at me. But she was there. It was a concession, a small sign that she understood her new place. Liam and I wrote our own vows. When he spoke his, he looked me in the eye and promised to always be my partner, to always have my back, to always choose us. And I knew he meant it. He had proven it over the past few months. He had become the man his grandmother had always hoped he would be. I wore the locket. It rested against my skin, a secret source of strength. It was no longer a symbol of oppression. It was a symbol of my victory. A symbol of the love and trust of a woman I had never met, but who had changed my life forever. After the wedding, things slowly found a new normal. Eleanor remained distant and cold, but she was civil. She followed the rules of our agreement. The power she had held over the family was broken. People started to see her for who she was, not for the powerful matriarch she had pretended to be. Liam and I built a life together, on our own terms. A life based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. We were a team, a real team. Sometimes I would take out the locket and open the secret compartment. I would read Margaret's note. It was a reminder of where I had come from and of the strength I had found within myself. She had given me a key, but I was the one who had been brave enough to turn it. I was the one who had unlocked my own freedom, and in doing so, I had freed the man I loved and an entire family from a prison of lies. Eleanor had wanted a daughter-in-law she could control. Instead, she got one who owned the house. And I knew, deep in my heart, that was exactly what Margaret had been hoping for all along.